Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
Hi, it's Kira Finkenberg. I'm the marketing and ticketing guru for Andy Hewitt and Bill Silva Presents. I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101 podcast brought to you by Steiny and Luke. Handcrafted for your listening pleasure. Enjoy Promoter
101.
Hey, it's Promoter 101. It is just shy of episode 80. We are 79, and I'm joined by W. Luke Pierce. What is up, my friend?
Dan, I'm so excited for episode 79 of Promoter 101. We're going to get down to business. We've got Entourage Talents President Wayne Forte talking about the early days of the business and current successes with Tedeschi Trucks Band, one of the best live shows out there on the road right now.
As well as C3's Tim Sweetwood talking about the massive business that is the festival world.
And we've got WME's Henry Glascock, a.k.a. the Crystal Pistol, turning the tables on Steiny.
And Billboards and Amplify's Dave Brooks will break down the news of the week. We always get the cutting-edge scoops from Dave. Stoked to get him back on the podcast.
Hi, it's Paula Palazzo from Live Nation Concerts Canada on Promoter 101.
We're finishing up our world tour, if you want to call it a tour. And hey, you can still catch us live from time to time.
Tuesday, July 24th, Dan is going to be moderating IAVM's Venue Connect 2018. He's got a star-studded panel with CAA's Brian Hill, APA's Ralph James, his business partner and Emporium Presents co-founder Jason Zink, and the Frank Productions Charlie Goldstone, plus Live Nation's Riley O'Connor. Dan, what can we expect from this panel?
I have no idea, but I have just learned that Ted Heineke from AC is making the trip up, doing a panel early in the day, and that should be a good time. So Heineke in the morning, me and Jason and Riley in the afternoon. And then I imagine, Luke, a little bit of drinking might happen.
A little bit.
Well, it is Canada.
Maybe some Crown Royal Maple?
It's where the beer runs frothier, so it'll be a good time.
If you want to check it out, head over to iavm.org. Get your conference passes today.
You can follow us on Twitter. W. Luke Pierce is how you follow the Lukester. I'm at The Jew. The show is Promoters 101 with that big fucking S there because, it's plural.
And we want to hear from you anytime, all the time. You can shoot us an email. Hit us at steiny@promoter101.net. That'll hit up both of us. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this podcast.
So me and Luke are massive West Wing fans, and in the spirit of that, I would like to offer up in tribute to the great show and a thank you to our listeners, our Promoter 101 Big Block of Cheese Week. This is how it's going to work. Anyone that would like to bend our ear for some advice or make a pitch or a request, you can email us at steiny@promoter101.net, and we'll set up some time to talk to you over the next week and hear you out. Anything you want, all you have to do is email, and we'll find some time, pitch or request or ask advice, whatever you want. Big Block of Cheese Day in tribute to Mr. Sorkin himself. Promoter 101 does our West Wing tribute by giving back this way and thanking you, our listeners.
Looking forward to Big Block of Cheese Day. I will be very much like the Josh Lyman and Toby Ziegler of this, as Dan sends in these amazing requests, and I somehow end up walking away from it very enthused.
We're looking forward to it. And if you haven't seen West Wing, it's on Netflix. It's amazing. There's also a great podcast that's in its fourth year, and it's West Wing Weekly, and it's amazing. It's a great thing. They go by the episodes. All of the cast has been on, including Sorkin. Great insight. What a way to break down a show. It was pretty cool.
What's next?
What's next?
This is Andrea Johnson from ICM Partners, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
If you've missed any of our past podcasts, well, what the fuck are you waiting for, man? That shit is like free. But here's what we're going to do. We're reissuing episode 37, as if they aren't always online and free anyway. But hey, this week, episode 37.
That's going to have Steve Rennie, also known to the industry as Renman Music in business, talking about his days at Avalon Attractions and his years managing Incubus, plus his own show, Show, Renman Live.
Also, Rob Zeffirelli, who was a UTA at the time of the interview, but now is at Paradigm Toronto, talks about the success of City and Color.
And we catch up with Kira Finkenberg about marketing the Hollywood Bowl season for Andrew Hewitt and Bill Silva Presents.
And it's time that you subscribe to this fucking podcast. What more do we got to do? We got to come to your house and break your fucking neck?
That was probably a little much, Dan, I would say. Maybe a little much. Maybe we just send them a strongly worded email. I don't know about breaking people's knees or necks.
Well, very intimidating on the mic and on the phone. But in person, yeah, I'm gentle giant. What can I say? Hey, please, seriously, we're begging here. Give us a review. Drop us that 5 stars. Hook us up. Give us a review. Tell us how much you hate us. It's great. No problem.
I'm Lucy Dickens from ITB, and I'm on Promoter 101.
News of the week.
Hey, it's time for News of the Week, huh, Luke?
Let's get to it. We're going to be joined today by our good buddy from Amplify Magazine and Billboard, Mr. Dave Brooks.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Don't start any rumors about me having you, my friend. It's strictly a plutonic relationship.
Well, there are benefits, but we'll talk about that another time.
Well, I'll get the peanut butter warmed up. So we're off to a great week. Let's talk about the news, Dave. What is going on out there in Coachella land?
How can you talk about Coachella without talking about Beyonce? She had hundreds of dancers on stage. It's like insane high-riser system, marching band. There's so many interesting aspects of her performance. I mean, she was the first African-American woman to headline the festival. She reunited with Destiny's Child. Her performance was the most watched festival performance ever. 43 million people at home tuning in via YouTube to watch her set. Her performance this year, I think it hung over the entire festival. It made it like this cultural moment. You don't see it happen with a lot of festivals, This is a big deal.
So you think this set will stand the test of time as the gold standard for festival sets?
Yeah, exactly. If you're looking to be number one, you're going to have to top Beyonce. And I think it's going to be really difficult to do.
I heard her husband even showed up.
Jay-Z performed with her. So did Solange. There was a lot of collaborations this year, which is always kind of a normal thing. But I think more so than in the years past. Dude, even the Yodel Kid got brought out to perform a few of his songs.
Coachella is obviously playing out again this weekend, and usually you see different cameos week 1 to week 2. So there should be different surprises out there. I don't think we can expect the same show from Beyonce or any of the other headliners, Eminem. I think you're going to see different surprises, as years past have always shown that it's never the same. They throw it up to be a cooler, hipper show. Are you expecting that this weekend?
Oh, yeah. I think you'll see all sorts of different guest appearances, and that's what kind of makes you want to tune in to who will play with who.
It doesn't broadcast again weekend 2, does it? It's just weekend 1, right?
They still will broadcast their performances, but no Beyonce this time. They're not going to play the Beyonce set.
What else is going on in the world, my friend?
So this whole UTA acquiring Circle Talent Agency story, to me, seemed like it got pretty bungled by UTA and Circle Talent Agency. So UTA acquired the EDM business of Circle Talent Agency, right? The dance music division. And they've got some great acts: Marshmello, Cascade, Excision. They've got some really talented guys and girls working on that electronic roster. But in the acquisition, they decided not to buy Circle Talent Agency's live music division, which is basically everything that's not EDM, and they fired everybody. When they announced it and they came to the press, they're like, look, we just did this awesome deal with UTA. Now all our agents are going to be at this world-class agency. And then you're like, well, what about the rock division? What about live? And they're like, oh, yeah, they're all fired. I don't know. It didn't seem like the most solid way to treat your employees, in my opinion.
I think the message of the day is, don't worry about the guys we fired. We're all rich.
Yeah, exactly. If you didn't ask, you wouldn't have noticed, because they never made one mention that they fired like 8 agents.
They fired a bunch of guys. They're not sending out a press release going, look what we did. Nobody wants to be that guy.
I get that, but just because you put it in a press release doesn't mean I'm going to tell it the way you want it to be told and gloss over the fact that you just shit-canned a bunch of people.
You're a reporter. We're expecting you to take the details of that and what you find interesting and turn that into the story, not just regurgitate. Are people expecting you just to republish their fucking press release?
Yeah, they are. And it's amazing. It's like they want word for word what they written on a press release to show up on the screen. My attitude is like, we're here to service the reader. We're not here to like service the person sending us a press release. And our audience is what's most important to us, our credibility. So yeah, if the story goes beyond what they tightly put in a couple paragraphs with quotes from everybody, it's not going to get written the way they want. And that's my job.
You have to feel comfortable putting your name on it, that it's a credible source and not just republish it.
Yeah, exactly. That is the job. When we see bullshit, we're going to call bullshit.
Let's get back to the news. We're hearing Polestar's got some changes coming up. What do you know about that?
They had a post the other day, and I thought it was really well written, explaining that Polestar Pro is basically going to go away. How long have you used Polestar Pro for, Dan? I mean, years, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a go-to for me. It's my main tool. I use it more than any of the other industry resource sites, for sure.
So there's this great Polestar article explaining the decision to take Pro down. And I suggest anybody who's ever worked in any kind of tech or a company should read it because it's hilariously written. So, they were really using old database programs. It's always been very difficult to update. And so they basically kind of kept it together with tape and toothpicks while they built a separate site next to it, Polestar. And so now they're just going to take it down. And while I think everybody agrees it's kind of dated and needs to go, still a part of me is a little bit sad to see it go.
Polestar's been around a long time, and regardless of what's changed, the Garys are still at the helm right now, and they've got a long history of reporting the news for the industry.
Polestar is synonymous with concert reporting, and they're going to keep growing. I mean, the new site works very well.
What else is out there in the industry, my friend?
Gary Vaynerchuk, he's this like online guy. He does the wine videos. He's built this huge branding company and doing Facebook videos and Instagram. He's going to create a content division with Gaio Series Maverick Management. It's going to be called the Vayner Maverick Music Content Project. And they're basically going to help artists create Facebook videos and Instagram stories and apps and team up with brands. And it's interesting. We're seeing all these companies kind of rush to build a branding division. Live Nation is who owns Maverick is wants to do. They just team up with one of the biggest people in the space. And I think this means that like branding is just going to continue to become an important part of artists' business. And we're just going to see it hyper accelerated.
Dave, as always, thank you so much for breaking the news of the week down for us, man. Thank you for being on Promoter 101.
Hey, thanks for having me, Steiny. I always love being on the show, and I always listen.
Dave Brooks, you can catch up with him at The Real Dave Brooks at Twitter.
Awesome. Thanks, Steiny.
News of the week brought to you by Amplified Magazine, Billboards Dave Brooks.
This is Marcia Vlasic, president of AGI Talent Agency on Promoter 101.
We want to take a moment to point out your attention and affection to the Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. And this week, it's none other than the person you just heard from Amplify Magazine and Billboard, Dave Brooks. Always looking for the next scoop. He's always taking some time to help us with this podcast. And that makes him this week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. Congrats goes out to our buddy Dave. Check him out at Amplify Magazine and Billboard.
Patty Ann Tarleton. I'm overseeing Canada for Ticketmaster today, and I'm on Promoter 101.
In our feature interview this week, we got a special interview with Entourage Talent's president, Wayne Forte. This man has seen it all in the music business, but today he's here to talk about his current successes with Tedeschi Trucks Band. That is Derek Trucks and Susan Tedeschi. Simply one of the best live shows out on the road right now.
Entourage Talent's Wayne Forte. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. I've been waiting to be back on the podcast again.
Yeah, you joined us at Polestar and we did a fun live thing.
So this is the real thing now.
When you were putting together the picture of your career, what are some of the highlights that jumped to you?
Well, I started out just wanting to be in the business for maybe a year to try it out. I worked my way up. I was a middle agent for a while. I was a manager for a little bit. I worked in a management company. I wasn't actually the manager. And then I went back into the agency business very quickly. So highlight, head of the music department at William Morris. I guess that was the highlight of that part of my career in New York. I did that for about a year. I was at William Morris for 4 years, but I was the head of the music department in New York for about a year. And then one of the agents from William Morris and I left and started our own company. So that was another highlight. We had that company, International Talent Group, for 12 and a half years.
ITG.
Yep, ITG. So 12 and a half years. And during that time, there were so many highlights. Great tours, big artists. My first arena show was a highlight. My first stadium show was a highlight.
Who were each of those?
First arena show, David Bowie, probably. I was in the 70s. And then when we opened our own business, ITG, we had A lot of arena shows. First time The Cure in an arena was a highlight. First time Depeche Mode was in an arena was a highlight. First time Duran Duran was in an arena was a highlight. I mean, every time one of the acts stepped up, it became a new highlight.
All milestones.
Yeah, all milestones. And then after you do that, what do you do? So then I said, okay, well, maybe we can make this happen in a stadium. So then we did Depeche Mode at the Rose Bowl, which was a highlight and a mark in the industry. I think I don't know how many shows were at the Rose Bowl before that, but on that level, on the alternative side, that was major. Then I did The Cure at Dodger Stadium, and then we did Depeche at Dodger Stadium. I did The Cure and Depeche each individually at the old Meadowlands Stadium. I worked on the Tragically Hip in Canada, and we did outdoor tours across the country, like 10 acts. Touring festival kind of things in stadiums and outdoor parks and stuff. That was another one.
You were the Tragically Hip's agent in Canada while Jake managed them and they were blowing up?
Oh, yeah. I was the agent in America. They had blown up, and then he and his partner asked me to take over the agency in Canada because they wanted to step it up even more. They wanted it to be not so much the local act.
So you repped them in Canada for a while?
Yeah, for 5 or 6 years probably. And then we did all those outdoor places, arenas. We did 2 dates out of Toronto in a park. We did a weekend. We did 2 shows, 50,000 a show. We did opening week at the Air Canada Arena when it opened in Toronto. Did a New Year's Eve and New Year's Day show, sold them both out. I was on the turn of the millennium, 1999 to 2000.
That was a band that became a huge arena act in Canada, but in the States, never more than theaters, really.
Correct. Well, except for one market, Buffalo. Buffalo, they played the amphitheater there, and they did big business. That was the only market.
The radio bled down from Canada?
Radio bled down. And, some of the Canadians right across the border would come across. But, there's places in, Michigan, Detroit did well, but again, not on a huge level. Canada was strong. Places where the music bled down and places where there were lots of Canadians or people working that were from Canada and bring their friends. And that's how it started. And then people came out and they discovered them. Problem is there wasn't enough cities like that for it to happen. And airplay was already starting to go out the window by that point.
So you've been Derek Truck's agent since he was basically a boy.
Well, he just became legal age to sign a contract. 19 years.
So Derek Truck's band, he toured that throughout the U.S. for, 10 years or so?
11 or 12.
And then it became Tedeschi Trucks Band.
Yeah, more or less. What happened was Susan is represented by a different agency, actually technically still is, and had a different manager than Derek. And we had done some things. We did a couple of shows together. I saw something on stage with the two of them that was just undescribable to me. I mean, I was like, oh my God, there's some electricity here. So I tried to convince the manager we should do some dates together. So we did a tour with the 2 bands once, Susan Tedeschi Band, Derek Trucks Band. And maybe a couple of years later, again, I wanted to see, something more than that. So I kind of bugged the manager to think about it, talk to them about it. So we did a Soul Stew Revival tour. I don't know if you remember that. And that was basically Derek's band with Susan singing and Susan's sax player. We did a tour, not a long tour, but we did a good tour with that. Some decent business. Just with the 2 of them in the band, it was magic. It was fucking electricity. So about 2 or 3 years later, they decided that they would try something together. So what they actually did was they started from scratch and they brought people in, played with them, and they like tryouts almost, right? But they brought people in to see how it would fit musically, personalities, all that kind of stuff. And they ended up choosing some of the people from his band, one person, I think, from her band, maybe 1 or 2 from her band, and then some very new people.
Live, I don't think there's anything that comes close to what is the power of Tedeschi Trucks Band.
There really is nothing that's like that out there.
You've represented Joe Satriani for his entire career.
Not really, because he's actually in a band. He started in Long Island, and he moved to San Francisco, or Berkeley. I guess Berkeley he was living. And he was in a band out there. There wasn't much happening with it. And then also teaching guitar lessons. He was giving guitar lessons to pay for rent. Then he was asked to be in, I think, the Greg Kinn band. There was one of the San Francisco Bay Area bands. They were looking for a guitar player, so they asked him to be in the band. In the meantime, he had made a solo album, the first ever album, right, which the fans and collectors know about it, but it's not like the first official Joe Satriani album.
It's basically a demo?
No, out of his fucking pocket. He just made his own album. He was pretty much maxed out on his credit cards, I think, as the story goes. And when he got this gig and was like, oh, fuck, now I'm going to pay my credit cards down. And so he was in that band. So that was that. And then he made a follow-up record at some point in time, and that was the Surfing with the Alien album. And that was when I got involved. And somebody mailed me in the old days when he used to send out those promo packs. I got this promo. I played it in my car and it was like, holy shit. I had never heard anything like that before. I was in the fusion business for a long time, personally. Okay. I represented Chick Corea and Return to Forever, Weather Report, Billy Cobb and Spectrum. So I was in that business for a while. I worked at an agency, but those were my clients.
Guys that could play.
That could fucking play. Like you'd go out and see him. I was like, holy shit. What is this all about? So when I heard him, I hadn't heard anything like that since them. a guy that could really fucking play and not just be noise, you know. So I chased it. I ended up signing him. So that was 30 years ago. I represented him a long time.
Has Mick been managing him the entire time?
Pretty much. He signed with Bill Graham as a manager. And Bill Graham management was Arnie Pistolnik and Mick Brignan. They ran the management division. So yes, pretty much he's been with them since the beginning then too.
I remember the G3 tour. Satriani, Vi, Eric Johnson. Was the first one Adrian Legg or Robert Fripp?
It might have been Adrian Legg on that tour. Robert Fripp was the next one.
I remember they did a live CD, took a little snippet from different shows. And that, of all things, I still have. A lot of that was recorded in Denver, and that was fun.
Yeah, it was just kind of a thing we threw around the idea. Well, different ideas. I had suggested to Mick at one point that maybe we should try to put something together, like package Joe up, because we had toured him pretty much on his own. I mean, there wasn't very many people doing that, except, in the fusion business. And it really wasn't. It was kind of more metal than it was fusion in a way, or hard rock. So it was like, who do we package him with? And then bands with guitar players didn't want him on the show. I mean, he's going to open and then what? I'm going to come out. How am I going to match that kind of thing? So I used to get that all the time. There's no way he can't open. So I said, we need to package. We need to put something together. I said, what if we put 3 or 4 guitar players, got a band, put them on stage and did like a festival thing. They play, 5, 6 songs a piece and jam together. I said, I think people will pay for that. And so he said, let me talk to Joe. And they talked about it, some ideas they had. And then they came back with the format that we have now.
And you guys have done 4 or 5 of these now.
Yeah. But the one that we're doing now is the first time in 10 years in the U.S. We haven't. We've done more of them a little more frequently overseas, but we've also tried to space them out. So the first one we did, then we did the second one too soon. Did it the year after, mainly because half the promoters that did it was saying, this is amazing. We could do bigger business. Let's bring them back. And,
That was the OL tour. We went back to the OL too much.
Yeah, exactly. So we let it go after that for a little bit. Then we did it again. And then I think we didn't do it in the States for quite a while. And then we did some things overseas. And then we did another one here. And that was 10 years ago.
Remember doing it the first year and splitting $20,000 with my partner, Bill Silva. And I remember doing it the next year and losing $20,000 with my partner, Bill Silva.
Speaking of Bill Silva, I was thinking about something last night, actually, because I'm reading this book, The Rise of Superman. And it talks about, how super athletes and adventurer people and stuff like that can get through these ridiculous things without killing themselves because they're so good. It's almost like a sixth sense in a way. Anyway, in one part of it, they talk about all the young skateboarders from way back when they were just like guys knocking around in the park. And then all of a sudden they started doing some amazing things and like amazing tricks and feats and stuff like that. And then magazines and the board company and everybody started jumping in and it kind of propelled it up. And I remembered I did the tour with Silva in early to mid 80s. He did that skateboard and bike tour. Reading this book at the progression of how the boarders came up during the period of time, he was so far ahead of his time with the concept.
The whole concept of what Tony Hawk's Huck Huck Jam before Tony Hawk was Tony Hawk.
Exactly.
He was like, the Lord is a dog town, the Z-Boys.
Yeah, the Z-Boys. That was in the book. I was just reading.
Zephyr.
Yeah. And so Bill picked those guys up. He just said to me, hey, I got this idea for a show. What do you think? You want to get involved? And I ended up pitching out to a bunch of promoters and getting them to do it. Big mistake was that they didn't really know what the fuck it was. I said he was in way too early, but great idea anyway.
No, but there needed to be something for the extreme sports, and it wasn't there yet. It was too early, but the guy was a visionary.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He's a good guy. I did a lot of stuff with him. So I just happened to remember last night about this thing, which I had totally forgotten about. And it just reminded me that he really was ahead of his time with the concept.
You've had this amazing career. You showed us the route sheets before where you still have the handwritten routings for the Who and you keep your route books. And not just the Who, but the Doors and everybody that was in those routings. Over the years, just amazing the acts that you got a chance to touch.
I'm a hoarder of sorts. I do hoard a lot of old stuff. After I left the agency, I just kept, my book and then the next agency and I kept the sheets and then the next agency I kept the sheets. And so I have them all.
They really should wind up at the Hall of Fame. They're amazing.
I mean, it's interesting to see the acts, but then to look at what they earned, the places they were playing at certain times, it's really funny.
That's what they were making or what they needed to make, what cities they were in, the routings. It's amazing. There's a lot of detail in those sheets.
At the staff meeting, you'd sit down and everybody would bring their book in and they'd talk to each other. Okay, this is what I just booked. This is what I booked. This is what I booked. This is what I booked. This is the dates I need or this is the cities I need or whatever. We used to actually sit and look at each other and say, okay, put this in your book.
The industry has changed. If you want to get 10 offers from 10 different promoters on a single date, you send an email and you get a PDF back with the avail and the offer, and you can compare the offers and look at the expenses. Before, if you wanted to get competing offers, you had to physically take down the numbers.
I don't know how all the other agencies work, but if you're into developing and building the act, you kind of know where you're going to go. So you might say, hey, there's 2 different venues and let me see what they'll offer. But for the most part, you might have already in your mind where you want to go, where you want to be. So it's like, okay, I want to be be here. Are you interested? Yes. Okay. You've worked with the act before, so let's work on it, as opposed to just throwing it out there. But that's just me. So, I mean, other people may want to see 10 offers. Some managers want to see 10 offers for every market because they want to see what the competition will pay. And that's fine. Back in the day, as you were saying, when you couldn't email everybody, one of the differences were the promoters who were the regulars. And they could have been the big guys in the big cities or just the secondary guys or even smaller guys, but they were the regular buyers kind of thing.
The guys pretty much of the Frank Barcelona network.
Yeah, but even beyond that, because there would be Frank's network, but then there'd be, you know, the other guys that Frank didn't deal with necessarily because he had his guys, but that dealt with all the other agencies. And some of the Frank's guys dealt with the other agencies. Some of them didn't. They were happy just to deal with Frank. You know, because Frank took care of them. I mean, they developed the acts. I mean, they took the acts from the beginning, and that was theory. They developed them, so they kept developing them. So you didn't need anybody else to come in. What would happen was the regulars, the guys, whether Frank's guys, the other guys, the younger guys, they'd call in at least once a week. So there was a difference between the email blast. So they'd call in usually. You know, you didn't necessarily have to call out and say, hey, are you interested? Occasionally you did. Obviously, if there was a notice of a new tour, you might want to do that. But they checked in. And I'm talking about the regulars, and those are the guys you regularly did business with because they were on top of it.
And when you're talking about the older promoters, they were all amazing personalities.
Yeah.
But they weren't all nice to each other. The industry seems to have changed over the years.
Yeah.
There's a way that you're allowed to talk to each other, or you're expected to talk to each other, that did not exist back in the day. Promoters would yell at agents. It wasn't a rare thing for someone to bite somebody's head off.
Yeah. And again, it was a different time, but a lot had to do with the relationship. And then again, sometimes even when you had a relationship, you get your head bitten off. I mean, there was a fight for the territory. All acts weren't doing 60 shows at a time. You know what I mean? Like 60 date tours and whatever. So, you know, there was a fight for the acts that did business. And they also developed a lot more than being developed today. They had outlets. They had many of them, not all of them. They either had a club or a ballroom they controlled. And that was their, you know, situation, or a theater. Some of them had a lease in a theater, which, you know, still goes on today. But back then, those guys were the guys that most of them started out in clubs or ballrooms. And then they just realized where the business was going. They knew they'd have to make deals to be able to maintain some kind of control. You know, you want to come into this venue in this town. It's mine. It's not open. I have a lease, or I own it, or I have a partner, or whatever. So there was a lot of that was going on. And then when the guys who were used to being treated certain ways, there were some of those guys that just came up from there because some, again, were club owners, and they booked a lot of different things. But Frank coming in with, you know, take this one, boom, Led Zeppelin, take this one, boom. You know, they were breaking. It was popping. It was late 60s, early 70s. I mean, that stuff was really popping. So all of a sudden it was like, holy shit, this is really happening. So we're going to go the next step. So let's get a theater so we can put him in and whatever. Well, some of those guys went to the other agency and said, hey, you know, I want to move your act up to a theater. A lot of the other agencies didn't work under those principles. They were the let's get 10 offers and see what goes on. So there was a lot of that head biting because of that. Be like, well, wait a minute. I played him in my club. And then the agent or agency would say, yeah, well, we don't care. We just want to see what the best offer is. So some of the head biting was over that. Today, some of that goes on, but mostly not.
It's more of a kindler, gentler interaction now.
Yeah. There are a lot more I think, and I could be wrong, but there's a lot more direct relationships now maybe than there was back then. There's a lot more of you deal with certain guys at certain agencies. They deal with you. They also might deal with the other guy up there and whatever. So you have your relationships. It's always been a relationship business. But I think if, for instance, if APA worked on the way of, you know, we don't give a fuck and it's the best offer, you'd all of a sudden say, hey, wait a minute. What about all this that I did for you? And also, we didn't have conferences like this way back when. People didn't get together to know each other.
Seems like over the years, promoters have become less entitled. It's my act. It's something you hear less now. The ownership of that has changed from maybe the mid-90s to the modern day. There's been a conversion in that terminology.
The thing was, a lot of those guys that started out, and some today, I mean, there are some today as well, but for sure then, they were building a business. And a lot of them got in either to be in business in music, but not necessarily thinking they were going to be the biggest promoter in the town and one of the biggest in the country. Or they just loved music so much, they wanted to do something about it, you know, do something with it. So they started promoting concerts, and kind of where John was at, I think, because that's what he did. And then he had, with a partner, he had that theater in New Jersey, the Capitol Theater in Passaic, I think it was.
Was Sheer one of those guys that would yell a lot too?
Oh, yeah. Way back in the day. And I would yell at him. I mean, we talk about it now. He'd go, oh, God, you know, so we've got either gotten too old or we mellowed out, one of the two. So
Did you not yell back at Graham?
No, because I was afraid he'd get on a plane and come and kill me, you know.
So there's different levels of intimidation.
Yeah. And I didn't really.
But Sheer was more of a peer with you, opposed
I was just
to
gonna
Graham was an icon already when you.
Yeah. So the difference was I was the young kid on the block. I'd been in the business a very short period of time. So if I decided I wanted to do something and he didn't agree with it, it would always be, who do you think you are? How can you make this decision? I'd say, because I'm the ex-agent. and I'm not making a decision, but I'm suggesting that's what we should do. And that's what the act would like to do. Well, we're going to do this, but John was a little bit of that too, even though we were peers, because he was around a little longer than I was. And he had really, really established himself. And I was still a young agent for a long time with, not a lot of credibility, so to speak, no history behind me yet. But what I was getting at with those guys is that usually if they saw an act that they liked and they wanted to play them, and they did play them a lot, which is what John did when he had his theater. And then he played other shows in other places as well. And all these guys did. That's where it became my act, because it was, how many times did I play you in Philadelphia or Boston or whatever the town was? Didn't I put you on this show? It was always, I helped you break that act. That was how it became my act. Not all of them were yellers either, okay? There were certain guys that were known as yellers. Those were the guys that some of the agents would say, I don't want to call him, he's a yeller. I was always like, I don't care. They're going to yell at me. I mean, whatever. They'd yell, they'd hang up the phone. It was over. I had a long time relationship with Larry Maggot.
Was Larry a yeller?
Yeah, Larry was a yeller. And when I started doing business with Larry Maggot, everybody in the agency I worked for at the time said, oh my God, good luck. You're going to need it. All that. And it was like, and I'd say, what are you talking about? And somebody said to me, oh man, he's a yeller. He is going to frickin' tear your head off every day or whatever. And he had a club. So I was dealing with him because I was a young guy and he had a club. And so they said to me, you can book that club. Well, even at that point, Larry was doing all those big shows at the arena, and he probably had already done a couple of stadium shows by that point as well. And he was doing other markets, Pittsburgh. I think he did Cincinnati, Hershey. So I was the guy that was dealing with the club. But even as much as he was doing, he booked the club himself. So when they assigned me, you going to book his club, there's two reasons. Because one, no one else wanted to book the club, right? Mm-hmm. Give it to this kid over here. And two, they didn't want to talk to Larry any more than they had to. So I was booking the club with him. He was fine. I mean, he yelled a couple of times along the way, but I never thought that he was a yeller, from my standpoint. I had a very good relationship with him. Did a lot of stuff for me, helped me a lot.
So that would be like a promoter's Uber rating now, right?
Exactly.
Instead of like, he's got a low Uber rating, he's a yeller.
And they were guys that were known as yellers for sure. My answer to I played it for you first and it's my act is always been from the beginning is, if the act meant absolutely nothing and I said, would you do me a favor and play it? And they did, and it popped, then it's their act. If it was something that was going to score from day one and they played it, it's nobody's act. That was always the way I felt it.
There was never an investment. You made money from show one.
Yeah. And it's not just money. It's time and willingness, the market, like to help bring it up.
Let me talk to you about Europe. Barcelona was good at this too, but you were really good at going over the pond and finding out what was coming up and what was cracking there and was about to break. I assume the indicator was they were already breaking there and you wanted to represent them in America, but you had a lot of the international acts that were out in Europe that you represented for North America.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a game plan that you're like, well, they're already breaking here. Clearly, the record label's going to put money into them in America. It's good music.
Well, there's two reasons. The first reason I did it, and I used to go over there once or twice a year at the very beginning.
Just because they had a better cup of coffee?
No, better tea, really. But because I wanted to see what the scene was going on. It made it a little bit easier for me, I guess, in a way, because I felt like it was a part of my life. When I was married to a Brit, became an American, but she was a Brit originally. So it made me feel a little more comfortable when I went over. And I was more comfortable because I'd met her family and met some of her friends and I dealt with them. So what I spent time doing was learning that the UK and the US are two countries divided by the same language. They both speak English, but they're different Englishes. Different slang, different, mores, different mannerism, different everything. So, from that standpoint, I spent time learning that even before I started dating, my ex-wife. But when I did, I started learning it so that when I talk to people, I do it even today in Europe now because Italy's got a different way of doing things. Spain has a different way of doing things. I learned it so that I could communicate with them so that they'd understand it better. Because if not, it was like, oh, he's just an American. So I became that familiar face from America and I just started going over there. So that was part one. Part two, the reason I went over there originally was because I was trying to make a name for myself. I was trying to create something for myself. I didn't just want to be a booking agent booking on the line for my whole life because I didn't say, okay, all I want to be is a booking agent. I got into it, just as I told you, for like maybe a year or two just to see what it was all about. I loved music. I used to promote concerts in college and I wanted to be in the scene, but I didn't know what to do. Somebody offered me a job. I decided to leave my life that I had semi-established getting out of college in North Carolina, move back to New York, try it out for a year or two and see what happens. When I got in, I just thought, okay, so now I'm doing this. Now what? I'm not getting paid a fuckload of money. I mean, it was okay. I was living, but it wasn't the reason I was doing it. I was doing it for the music. So then I thought, well, I need something for myself. So I started going after a lot of rock acts. And I liked a lot of the British stuff, Cream, Zeppelin, but I loved the Doors and Creedence and Hendrix. And, Hendrix is kind of a hybrid of both, really, because it was like an American guy going to England, becoming famous and coming back. So I tried to get in there. But the problem was Frank Barcelona controlled most of that. Those acts were fed to him by the managers and the record labels because he was scoring with them. He was making them big acts, big
Why
money.
fuck with what's working?
Right. And then number two is there was another agency called ATI, American Talent International, that was in America that was like, if Frank was the top English rock agency in America and rock agency, period, but let's call it Brit rock agency, ATI was number two. It was like Avis and Hertz in the old days, to the point where ATI went into the same building Frank was in fucking New York, like a floor underneath or a floor above, right?
That's weird.
No, because they wanted to be, if they're coming to see Frank, they can see us. If he says no, they'll sign with us. And so Jeff Franklin was one of the heads. Ira Blacker, there was a Sal Safian guys there. They actually offered me a job at one point, but didn't want to pay me. They paid me less than what I was earning at the time. So I said, no, thank God. In any event, so they were getting all the other ones. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like the agency that I was working at the time, we'd have one or two, like you couldn't fucking sign one. I couldn't sign one. I was the new kid on the block. So I thought, well, I got to do something about it. So I went over to London because, again, I wasn't married. We were just dating at the time. Britt went over to visit her family. And I said, okay, I'm going to take a couple of days while we visit her family. I'm going into London to see if I can meet some people. So I went into London and I just looked around, and I'd see what I could do, see what the scene was. And the punk thing was happening. So it was like, Sex Pistols and all that shit. And I was like, wow, that's like interesting stuff. And, I started meeting some people and, I saw some acts and I'd go out to clubs. Then I thought, you know what? I got to go back again. So I went over on my own dime a couple of times and just went over and go and look at acts, meet people. And then I was finally at an agency that would allow me to travel and pay for it. And I went over, once or twice with them. A record company flew me over once because they wanted me to sign their act. So I signed it. Nothing really ever happened, but, I worked it for a while. And then at the same time, just meeting people. You got to keep meeting people. And as they move up, all of a sudden, the guy that I met that was just a young kid at the label, he's like in charge of fucking artist development. And then he's like the assistant director or whatever, right? So over the years, they move up. So it's not like it happened overnight. And then finally, when I went with William Morris, part of my deal there was I could travel anywhere, anytime that I wanted to sign an act. I didn't have to ask. I didn't have to do fuck all. I never took advantage of that. Every time I went, I brought 2 or 3 bands minimum back with me, always. And I tried to keep the cost down. I always did it thinking, what would I do if it was me? If it was out of my pocket, what would I do? So I kind of was always thinking about running my own business, even though I wasn't running my own business. So anyway, I went back and forth quite often, 2 or 3, 4 times a year. Met all these people, saw all these acts. And so that was it.
Because you're one of the few agents that carries the same stature on both continents, which you don't see a lot. I mean, CAA has offices on both sides where they're both big deals, but it's not the same agent in both rooms that stand out the same way. But you are Wayne at Polestar when you speak on a panel. You're Wayne there at ILMC, and you have the same level of respect over that you've built up over many decades. Clearly, it took a lot of time and commitment to that market to have been able to do that. And clearly, it wasn't about building a reputation up there, but in general, that's kind of what you're trying to do if you're trying to have the stature to build those acts. But you'd be able to play in both markets.
Yeah. I mean, it did take a lot of work. And it wasn't like I just started out saying, I'm going to try to build my reputation. It just happened because I'd go and people would see me and I'd go and then I'd go to the conference and I'd meet people. Like I used to go to people's offices. I mean, I'd go over there for 5 days or 4 days, let's say 3 days, whatever it was. And I would do 4 or 5 meetings a day, 9 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock at night. And then at night, after the meetings, I'd go out to 2 or 3 clubs. But I tried to meet as many people as I could. And every time I went over, I went back to see people that I met that I thought maybe there was a future with or there was a relationship. So I got to the point where some of those people that you see at LMC, although a lot of those people are moving on now because the younger guys are coming in and some of them are consulting or whatever they're doing. So they're moving on. But before they did, they were all guys that I had met all along the way. So it was, oh yeah, Wayne Forte, we know him for 20 years, 30 years. It's like I was just always there. And I tried to do good things. I tried never to screw anybody, tried never to go behind anybody. If somebody said to me, he should be your agent, I made sure that I delivered because I didn't want to let that guy down, especially with record labels, because I also established relationships with record labels, even more than the agents. I started out with record labels, actually, because the agents didn't want to talk to me. They felt, I guess I was a threat or something. I don't know. Why are you over here? That kind of thing. It's like, what are you doing here? I'm looking for acts. I'm going to bring them back to America. So really, I established my reputation or relationships with record labels to begin with. So I started signing the acts directly from the labels. I knew that the company in the UK wanted to make this happen in America. So I was their guy. And I went over and I met with them and I gave them a plan and I told them what I was going to do, met with the manager, and then I'd come back and I'd do my thing. And then it was up to them to get the labels in the US to support it because there isn't always a 1-for-1,
I have found the international picture to be amazing and inspired by you and Chuggy and Gary Smith and a handful of other people who do spend time paying attention to the international picture. And I have learned an enormous amount by the agents and managers and promoters on the other side of the pond, and fascinated by guys like Stuart Galbraith. Number of agents that are on that side of it, whether it's guys like Barry Dickens or John Giddings, who literally claimed his careers because of you, which has got to feel great because like that guy built an amazing career.
Yeah, he's built a really good career for himself. He was a former partner of mine actually, but had a career before that. I didn't invent him. I mean, he was a guy I worked with or I knew. I didn't do a lot of things directly with him, but I liked him and I knew him and we were very friendly about things. And I, approached him to, when we were at TG and expanding, to be a partner of ours.
It's so amazing because you see these parallels. We don't compete with each other too. So it's these amazing guys. Toby Leighton-Potent is like, pick up the phone or send a quick note through social media like, hey, what's this doing? And it's great because it's like they're in a completely different world, but at the same time, the worlds aren't as far apart as they used to be 40 years ago because of TV and mass media. New York and London are very, very similar cultures.
When I first went over to the UK, very first trip, when I was working for the management company, and they sent me over with an act that was on the road. I ended up being the road manager because they didn't have a road manager and the manager was doing something in the studio. So he said, you go, because I worked in the management company. I worked in the office. You couldn't get a decent hamburger over there anywhere. There was no McDonald's there. Wimpy Burger, I think, was the best that you could get, and it was gross. And it wasn't until McDonald's opened that you could actually get a burger that was close to an American burger. I mean, now you can get hamburgers anywhere over there. So things were really different back in those days between internet now and TV, as you said, because again, back in those days, I think there might have been 3 channels over there. There was 2 government channels and 1 independent. That was it. TV shut off at 10 o'clock at night. It started in the morning. Like there was no all night TV over there. It was a wholly different world. It was very much, I want to say kind of isolated, but not isolated, but isolated because it is a big island, basically. It was their thing. I mean, there was no double pane windows when I first went over there anywhere. Everybody's house, every fucking apartment had drafts. I mean, they were all cold. People would walk around with sweaters and things indoors, and they had heat, but it was expensive for gas and even electric, but fuel, oil or whatever. So people's houses I would visit, they didn't turn the heat up all day long. They turned it down at night when they went to sleep. And I mean, you go to somebody's house that lived in a really nice house, other than a mansion or one of the estates or whatever. But that's how they lived. And there was no double pane. I remember coming back thinking, how big a deal would it be for somebody to like come over here and start double paned windows? And then, I don't know, 2 or 3 years later, somebody that I knew moved into an apartment and said, oh yeah, come over to my apartment, go hang out. And I go over and he has double pane windows. I'm going, oh, finally. But it was really different culturally. You had to assimilate into that. And I realized that first trip I ever made where a guy almost took my head off 2 or 3 times because I was a wise ass American and I'm going to these clubs and there's these like fucking British East End club owner guys. And it's like, again, who the fuck do you think you are? But with a East End accent,
Cockney.
Yeah, the Cockneys, no, I'm the tour manager of the band. I don't give a fuck who you are. It's like, yeah.
Wayne, thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us.
Yeah.
Talk about a legend. Mr. Wayne Forte is holding court right now on Promoter 101, and we're just thrilled to have him.
Hi, it's Marcy Allen, president of Mac Presents, and honored to be on Promoter 101.
Tweets of the week.
You know them, you love them. It's time for the Promoter 101 tweets of the week. Let's start here. No one ever really warns you about the volume of paperwork involved with every fucking thing on earth.
Hashtag truth.
There's no profit in making enemies.
So it just takes so much longer to rebuild that bridge, man. Don't do it.
And just another pissed off upper middle class suburban American kid dealing with the realities of the corporate rock world on a daily basis.
In my head, I think of myself as a 15-year-old kid still, but kind of hits close to home, doesn't it, Luke?
It does. And this is one of my favorites, Dan, because I've got a lot of fans out there that do this. Seen a few tour managers do it as well. But when someone counts the number of open seats on the seating chart, hashtag why?
Here's the thing. The systems are computerized, so holds, trouble seats, and production kills, and ADA holds are all in there too. So sometimes there are a lot of seats that are classified that aren't open, that are still not sold yet. So trust the computerized system to help you instead of just doing that. But yeah, who has the time for that? Such a weird game. Go build a puzzle if you got that kind of time.
That'll do it for Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week. Make sure you keep up with Dan on Twitter. He's at the Jew, and follow this show. This podcast is at Promoters 101.
100%.
What's next?
I'm Sarah Beasley from Wolf Trap, and I'm on Promoter 101.
This week's war story comes to us from William Morris Endeavor's Henry Glascock, a.k.a. the Crystal pistol. He's going to turn the tables on me, and we're just thrilled to have him on the podcast. Henry Glascock, what do you got for me, my friend?
So, Dan, your partner, Jason Zink, what is your strength and what is his strength? What is your weakness and what is his weakness?
Well, my strength is having a head of hair, and his strength is not. And he's a details guy. I'm very much a social butterfly, and I'm very big picture. So I'm out there working the room and doing the podcast and on the stage and meeting people. Jason is looking over everything to make sure that I'm not going too fast and bringing it in. And Jason tends to do some of the bigger shows that we do. When we do a Luke Bryan or we do a Miranda Lambert, do a Sam Hunt or a Keith Urban, it's usually Jason at the helm of that. I'm doing a lot of the Scorpions type stuff with Megadeth, or I'm doing the Straight No Chasers tours and the Home Free tours and the Trailer Park Boy tours. So we have these different worlds where they intersect and complement each other very well. But we have extremely different personalities. Jason, by no means, is a wallflower. He can work a room and is as social as the next guy and can hold his own with anybody. And I can certainly read through a deal and cut it, but Jason is way better at asking the questions where it was like, yeah, we should ask that. That's a good question. He usually is a great watered leak test for me, where it's just like, I don't see any holes in this. Do you? And he's like, if you like it, it's fine. Or if I'm like, no, I need you to look at this because it's important. And he'll really look into something and I'll be like, oh, yeah, okay. But when I tell him, I need you to see if there's something that I'm not seeing, he'll look at it and he'll find it because Jason knows the business and he is a motherfucker when it comes to details.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for having me.
The Crystal Pistol, Henry Glascock, right here on Promoter 101, Grillin' Steiny. Love it.
Hey, it's Mary Hilliard-Harrington with Red Light Management. You're listening to Promoter 101.
In our next interview, we're going to be joined by C3 Concerts Tim Sweetwood, who talks about the massive business of festivals.
Yeah, there was a comma there. You didn't read the comma.
I didn't read the comma.
What the fuck, man? Respect the comma.
More of a semicolon guy myself, if we're making lists.
I've always believed you to be a semicolon guy. That makes sense. Like deep down.
Throw that over the plate real high. See what comes back. Yeah.
It's going, gone. Then again, Tim Sweetwood's on the podcast now, and we'll stop fucking around. Welcome to Promoter 101, my friend.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Anyone that knows the festival game knows your name. You're making some serious headway in that world right now.
Appreciate you saying so. I think that's a little of a overstatement that not everyone knows the name, but do our best and trying hard to create what we can.
Well, you guys have a good team, and seemingly nationally, there's a lot of players right now, but you guys are doing some of the bigger events, and you guys are starting out in Tempe this year. We were just talking about Innings.
Yeah, Innings is a new festival we've got going on. It's Tempe around the Phoenix area. Basically, the concept was, with a lot of these new festivals, is you can't just put up a music lineup and expect it to succeed. You got to have something wrapped around it or a theme. And this was trying to attract some people that are already in town for spring training, which is hundreds of thousands of people, sidebarred with a music festival.
So do sports people like music too?
Yeah, I think they do. We did a lot of research into what kind of acts they like, and it is pretty all across the board. But I don't know if you've seen, but there are a lot of after shows at baseball games these days, and parks are bringing more in the fold. So
I remember the minor league ballpark games where they'd roll out the stage in Chicago where the Beach Boys would play back in our younger days. So this seems like this extrapolated out quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it just rolled into it. I think it was a concept where we saw even one of the headliners this year, Chris Stapleton. I mean, I think he came through in Atlanta and played a Braves after show, and having a relationship with the Braves, they're like, yeah, it was one of our better games that year, you know? So it kind of flowed naturally.
Everybody wants their Stapleton moments, even the Atlanta Braves.
Right.
Holy shit. That guy's having a fucking career this last couple of years.
And doing it the right way, to be honest. Like, I don't know if you saw the Saturday Night Live performance, but it's like, what you got to respect about him and a lot of the artists doing is there's just no compromise, right? He's still doing it his way. And I think there's a handful out there that way up in the stratosphere start to be a little bit more of an equation, and he's still doing it the right way and having people like Sturgill come on the show, you know.
There's no ego there. He's okay to share the spotlight. And very much like Johnny Cash did with the Highwaymen, with Willie and Waylon and Chris, it's like those guys would sing each other's song and be on stage together. I think we're seeing the start of that again, and I think fans loved that.
I think they super love it. And what you kind of pointed on, which is great, is everything goes in cycles, right? So some of these artists are feeling it. know what they're influenced by, and they're tapping into some of that. And
is that what I said? I guess pretty smart.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's any genre, right? It's not just country and it's not just hip hop.
Well, no, and I think it'd be hard to call Chris and Sturgill country at this moment. Certainly that's the easiest place to put them, or Americana, but clearly there's no border here. There's something about that where the fans are liking that they get to experience the music, and who gives a fuck what we're calling it.
To me, it's all rock and roll. Whether you're up there and it's Kendrick Lamar and he has a full band for performance, it doesn't matter to me. You know, if you got some instruments up there, there's an influence of rock and roll, which is cool.
So festivals have to pay more for X. You have a certain date, you're locked into it, and the agents know that you need them on that date, and they're going to get the money from you on that day. Does that create a problem for getting certain talent, or define how low your ticket price can be?
I think it relates to what the overall festival goal and the festival size. I mean, there's a difference between a Lollapalooza and a Shaky Knees, and then I kind of have to work backwards. If you have a Lollapalooza and you've got 100,000 folks that are locked in and they're coming every year, there's a little bit of a different feel to that and a different negotiation versus a Shaky Knees, is I don't have headliners that are as big as, say, be a Lollapalooza. But I think even though festivals pay more, I think there's more room for negotiation. We just kind of almost compete against ourselves.
I think we're seeing a little bit of a bastardization of that now, that a lot of the Live Nation AEG conglomeration, that you're seeing a lot of that talent buying being streamlined. So we're seeing a lot of the same headliners over and over again. Has that taken away from the uniqueness of the lineups?
In one sense, maybe yes, but in another sense, I think no, because I think at the end of the day, I'm that person, because I came from that world of kind of being a festival junkie. Is Lollapalooza in itself, being in the city of Chicago versus Coachella out in the valley versus Bonnaroo in the middle of Tennessee, is almost naturally creating that difference. And frankly, most common day ticket buyers, they can't afford to go to all three of those, right? So they're still picking. So it's very clear to what you said, like it's homogenized. There's no doubt. I mean, look at certain lineups this year that have the same artists, but naturally by their location, they're creating a different ambiance, different vibe, and different experience.
Now, we haven't really dove into the festivals too much on the podcast in general. I know that you're more than just the festival dude, but if we can dive into this for a second, the national on sales or the announce, it's almost like a runway. Coachella gets to go first, and they start to roll out day by day by day. And it used to be Coachella had like a week or 2 weeks head start. Now it's a day.
Almost hours, frankly.
Yeah, they're lined up and everybody is set up on what the announce date is, and it's all agreed upon, like based on who the headliners, how that's going to work. But Paul gets to go first, and then each individual, like where you're in line and priority and how important of a festival you are almost, is set up going through. Are you guys all talking amongst yourself on who gets to go on what day, or did Paul say this is my day and everybody starts lining up behind it? How does that work?
You naturally find out when Paul's going just from conversations with bands and agents. Small world at the end of the day, but we definitely talk amongst ourselves. You know, I'll talk to other promoters that are in the Live Nation C3 festival side of the world, which I'm in, and we definitely have those, because I don't want to, knock on wood, even smaller festivals like a Shaky Knees is lucky enough to get a national spotlight. So when you're picked up by some national press, I want to make sure that I'm not going at 10 a.m. Eastern the same time as Governor's Ball is. But a lot of that, I think, lining up all together, again, can be advantageous because people are comparing those. And like I said, can't afford to go to all of them. So why not line it up there with the rest of them? Let somebody pick and choose. If they happen to be in New York, they're probably going to pick the local one first. But at the same time, we have a lot of folks that travel in for different festivals.
If we're going to do that, why not just go back to the original Palooza model of touring the festival to every market?
I think the hardest part about that traveling piece is from the production side, frankly. It's expensive as hell to put these festivals up. And so to put one up and bring it back down almost on a daily basis is just too much. I mean, with the two Shaky festivals, for example, a Shaky Knees and Shaky Beats, I've been lucky enough to be able to hold them in the location back-to-back weekends. And one of the pieces why I did that is I can save money on production, on the cost of putting it up and taking it down.
Talking about the steel, right?
Yeah, whether it's the steel down to the fencing. You're building an infrastructure, and for two festival weekends, I'm putting it up once, taking it down once instead of twice for both.
How long does it take you to put up that site?
Those are an example of mid-sized festivals, so you're looking anywhere, probably give or take in the range of 10 days.
Okay, and Palooza?
Lollapalooza, you're talking more like 3 weeks.
3 weeks up and what, a week down, week and a half down?
Yeah, week down. It's about a third of the time to take one down. So if it's 9 days to put it up, it takes about 3 days to pull it down.
And that's an incredible amount of labor you're bringing in to keep those things going. And the coordination that it takes to put on these festivals is upper level. I mean, it's like doing a stadium show in a field that has nothing. From the in to the out, everything has to be set up for every eventuality, especially now that you guys are owned by Live Nation. You guys have to do everything correct. And that's just got to be a logistic fucking nightmare.
Nightmare, I think, is the wrong word, because whether I'm crazy or not, I enjoy it. But to your point, it is a year-round job. And not only a year-round job, it's almost, at this point, 18 months, whether it's the logistics. And then the biggest challenge is that from city to city, dealing with the city folks, dealing with regulations, whatever they are, they change, right? So we've got our procedures in-house, which is fantastic from a Live Nation C3 point of view, because I'm able to take advantage of more people, actually more processing, helping that situation. But the biggest challenge is easily the difference in Tempe, Arizona versus Atlanta, Georgia is night and day.
Yeah, definitely a humidity factor for sure. I'm just thinking of the insanity that goes into building those sites and how much it takes, and especially when you're multiple days. So day one, you finally up and built, and you've been there for 3 weeks already. You finally got the fans in, but you're well rested because it's day one. But day three, I mean, have you slept? Do you get a chance to sleep? How does that work? I mean, that's got to tear on you because you're babysitting a whole lot of nightmares simultaneously.
Definitely. I think it's a little more of relating to a bit of a sporting event. You're practicing, and then you're actually competing. So there's adrenaline going, and I think that gets you through it. But there's no doubt that all of us involved sleep way less on show days and exponentially coming into the festival and building. So making sure you got the right team around you. So when you do get those 4 hours of sleep, somebody else is on top of it.
But the radio is always an inch from you no matter what, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So let's talk about the fan experience. When building a festival, which is a very competitive space now, you have to create a fan experience that's not just about the music. It's about the experience, because you need the vibe to be out there that this was a fun fucking thing and people want to come back, because it's not a $22 ticket. These are expensive buy-ins.
I've always had the personal belief that for a festival to succeed, the music's got to sound good. There's no lines for a bathroom and there's no lines for a bar, right? Those are the essentials. Those are the
Well,
basics.
That helps you too, right? Because the F&B is a big part of that
That's
thing.
right.
So if they're waiting in line, they're not spending money yet.
Yeah, that equation relates to a bunch of it. But I personally felt, and again, being a festival junkie, and I didn't try to do these out of the blue, but funny enough, what I remember when I was younger, whether it was going to the very first Bonnaroo or going to some of those traveling Lollapaloozas, frankly, what I remembered was the people around me. I think one of the biggest factors to the experience is making some of the little pieces and the basic pieces work that I just said.
So did you get soap for people for free then? Because I remember those Palooza days.
Yeah. I mean, if you and I are going to a festival, the little things make us tick. The little things make us have a better time, right? So again, even those basics is you and I are standing there. We're standing in front of at the drive-in and we're ready to either go mosh or we're ready to stand there in the back and bob our head with a beer. The basic things make that experience better than whatever that particular activation is. If you can run away from me for 3.5 minutes and go to the bathroom and grab a beer, I'm happy when you come back to me, and you're happy when you come back to me, because we're still right there getting to experience that show.
Is your festival experience set up that somebody can actually get a beer and go to the bathroom in 3 minutes and get back?
I would challenge you to do it. Give it a try.
I mean, that would be amazing. I don't think it's realistic for somewhere where there isn't a line normally.
Sure, or it's not realistic in Lollapalooza when the site is about a mile from end to end. But I think some of these bigger ones.
But is that something you're thinking about, is how long going to the bathroom takes? Because when you need to take a piss, you're really thinking about that.
No doubt. I mean, to tell you how much that we really do think about that stuff, one of the cool new factors with Live Nation and C3 and the festivals is now if we've got new toilets trying to go into as many of these festivals as they can. And they're flushable toilets that are hooked into the city's sewer system and all that. And it's literally making for a better experience, whether it's smell, speed, you name it.
Probably more sanitary too.
Yeah, 100%.
We can talk about the festival thing for days because I just nerd the fuck out on it. But let's talk about the early days.
Beginning days were definitely independent. I was throwing parties at local bars. I was managing a couple local bands, and there was a opening at the Masquerade to book some local acts. And so took advantage of that, showed up at the venue twice a week. And what that quickly led into was the Masquerade, for those that don't know, have 3 rooms of varying sizes. So tons of days and tons of spaces to fill. So that quickly led into me finding what was missing in their programming and putting a little bit of that in there from a national perspective, and then kind of just taking it from there.
Sounds like it was a great springboard. Are you happy going from being that independent guy and now you're in this much bigger system where it's technically a C3, but overall you're part of the Live Nation system and you have all the resources that come along with that?
Yeah, I'm extremely happy because of the vision of Charlie Walker and Michael Rapino, and working with those guys, they'll talk from an overall perspective of their vision is to keep it entrepreneurial at the end of the day. So yes, you're working for a larger corporation, but the mindset is still very entrepreneurial. And I think you can see that in the fact of take this year is I was able to start a new festival in Arizona. We're going to start another one that I can't talk too much about, but it'll be in New Jersey.
You're going to do Sopranos Fest in New Jersey?
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome.
Only Sopranos performing.
Hope you work out a good thing for sanitation. You know what I'm saying?
All the deals are on the back end. To sum it up, they've done a really nice job of like being a big corporation, but having an independent vibe to it and just giving you the support and resources to make that entrepreneurial spirit work.
So how does that team work? I mean, technically, at the end of the day, your big boss is Rapino, but you're a C3 guy. So how does that chain work? You answer to who answers to who answers to who that finally gets to Rapino?
You know, I see it a little bit less of like who's answering, but we have a team in C3 of the management team and then a whole company supporting that and then working with the founders, the C's, if you will.
So you go through the Charlies.
We work with the Charlies on a daily basis, and then that funnels up to Rapino and Live Nation. But again, that independent spirit allows us to do as much as we can on that mid-level, and the higher it gets, the more Live Nation is involved.
So you and Rapino aren't normally hanging out at the gym together?
We're not hanging out at the gym together, but to give Michael a ton of credit, and I haven't worked at too many corporations throughout the years before I got into music, but that guy is about the most accessible CEO I've ever seen or even heard from friends. So I have a relationship with Michael. I like to keep that relationship up, and he's available when you need him, which is pretty cool, man. It's very cool, actually.
It seems like he responds to emails very quickly.
He does.
Which is impressive when you think about how many employees he has.
That's right. And even worldwide to these days. And again, I think what you're tapping into, which is cool too, is because the majority of people that are working under Live Nation C3, whether it's the festival circuit in Europe, that's all on our team. At some point, the majority of the people were independent or they were trying to get into the industry on their own. I think on the agency side and different pieces like that, kids come out of college and they get in their system and they do a little bit of that and work for a bigger corporation. But at least us on the promoter side, so many of us are independent. So there's a cool camaraderie, a willingness to help. And if I want to talk to some guys in Spain about, a project that comes up and talking to a company, I can pick up the phone, email those guys, and they're willing to help.
Let me ask you about that resource-wise. John Giddings, Isles of Wight, guys U2 and the Stones guy, but he's a Live Nation guy now. He sold the festival to them and be partner with them. If you want to get on the phone and trade ideas with the guy that does Isles of Wight, you can do that. And the company helps that along. They encourage that kind of stuff.
They 100% encourage it. I mean, again, there's a project that I can't name, but there's a project we're working on that may be coming up that's worldwide, and we're tapping into the resources locally because,
you bringing Hands Across America back. I nailed it, huh?
Exactly that. Now I can talk about it. Again, I was just using Spain as an example. I don't know those local markets.
It's hard to route a tour from Atlanta to Spain.
That's true. But they're going to have the ways they do things and they know their market best. So let's work with those people best. I mean, same thing where we have an integration going back to the Innings Festival is we work hand in hand with the local Phoenix Live Nation office to market that festival as best we can because they know the market.
That makes a whole lot of sense. And you're talking about Terry Burke, but at the same time, you've got Charlie involved now, and he's got the coolest club in the market, possibly the country, when you're talking about that ballroom. And now they've opened up the Van Buren. It's like those guys know cool. So I got to imagine that those guys have got to be a helpful resource.
They're a great resource. And again, Charlie's in on that mix, and Charlie will be there at the festival. And if I want to lean on him, he's open to those conversations and they kind of get it.
Yeah, you don't get a much cooler promoter than Charlie Levy. I really love that guy.
Definitely.
Can you give a guy that wants to produce a festival that's never done it before an idea of the first couple things they need to think about before they call an act? How do you outline? What's your first thoughts? How do you put that together in general? And I'm not talking about a Lollapalooza. I'm talking about finding a site, something smaller, maybe regional acts, but just taking your first attempt at it. What would you recommend? And kind of just a really basic outline.
For someone starting off, I mean, I would always recommend leave your ego aside as much as you can, which is hard in the music industry, but try to find a local partner, regional partner, a national partner that even can lay those tracks out for you. So again, we could talk for 3 hours on how to set that up. But I think if you found a partner, that's a great idea. Like, again, the saturation, which is everything in these conversations, it's there on a local level too. So find a partner so you're not upsetting the other people that are already doing stuff in the market.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to steal a headliner or something from guys that have been waiting for the return player.
Exactly. They'll find a way to cut you off. I've been there, done that, by the way. But then, too, you said it. I mean, the first thing is location, location, location. Getting in, getting out, having it feel really cool. So I think the location and small partner or someone to help you along that way is the best advice.
Before I let you go, you guys have done something really cool with Shaky Knees. Can you tell us about the tattoo?
Sure. I was dumb enough to get a tattoo several years ago of the logo of the festival. And then kind of almost at a joke, we were kidding around and talking and said, hey, let's see what happens and do a gimmick or a promo with it. So we came up with, if you get the tattoo at X size, you get into the festival for free. So now, as of this date, we have hundreds upon hundreds of people that take us up on that and get in for free to the festival.
The offer's still good. So if we put it up there on the website and people want to do it and they're willing to commit.
A tattoo's for life, right? So you kind of got to match that up. So life for life.
Thank you so much for taking time, Tim.
Thanks for having me.
Who's up for getting a tattoo? What a great promotion. It's for life, though. Free festivals for life with that tattoo. Luke, what do you think about that? Would you get a tattoo on your body for life to get into a festival the rest of your days?
I would definitely consider it. I think I've gotten tattoos for dumber reasons. Bonnaroo, I think maybe that would be up there for me. ACL would certainly be up there. I would ask that I get the VIP artist pass in addition to that, rather than just the GA pass. That's what I'm really after. I'm after the open bars.
So if you could get Bonnaroo for free for the rest of your days, you'd get a particular tattoo put on your body.
Bonnaroo artist pass for the rest of the days. Yeah, I would definitely, absolutely do that.
I'm thinking we could work this out. We can call Ashley, see what he's willing to do, and let him pick the image that you have to put on your body for the rest of your days. And then I bet our listeners would help pay for this, the tattoo, so you'd have to pay for nothing. Shit, if they won't, I will. I think this is hilarious.
Would absolutely love to put this out as a contest. Let's see what Mr. Caps has to say.
You'll let him pick the design?
I'll let him pick the design. I have to have approval of where it goes.
I mean, I think the AC logo right on your ass.
Hey, you know what? I've always liked the AC logo, so I'm not going to object to that one. It's a visually pleasing thing at the bottom of show posters.
All right, well, Ashley's due to be on the podcast soon anyway. I think what a great thing to bring up right off the bat. All right, anyway, what a great interview. Moving on.
This is Meg White from ICM, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
We're celebrating some birthdays the week of April 20th to the 26th, 2018.
Friday the 20th, Ian Goldberg, CAA's Hunter Williams, Julie Baker, and from ICM Partners. On 420 itself, the man they call the mustache, Ricky For Real. Happy birthday.
On Saturday, the 21st, we're wishing happy birthday to the Paps, Gary Witt, SMG's Tim Higgins, Harold Norris, and TKO's Jim Lintz.
Sunday, tour manager to the stars, Mr. Jim Runge, and APA's Jamie Kelso, a.k.a. Mrs. Josh Humiston.
On Monday, wishing happy birthday to Jay Bellin, APA's Aaron Dixon, and Home Free Zone, the beatboxer extraordinaire, Mr. Adam Rupp.
Gotta love some Adam Rupp. Happy birthday, brother. Tuesday, the 24th of April, Jenny McPhee, Paramount Austin's Stephanie Kroc, Doug Castro, and Tim McFadden.
On Wednesday, wishing happy birthday WME's Nate Town, Nikki Hadid, Straight No Chasers, Jerome Collins, and manager Doug LaFrock.
Thursday, 4/26, Dan Forte and the McDonald Theater in Eugene's Nick Rossoff.
Happy birthday to everybody from the gang here, Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Lucy Lawler-Freese, Rival Entertainment and the Fox Theater in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Feel free to send us a note. We want to know what you thought of this podcast. Drop us a line at Steiny, promoter101.net.
Quote of the week comes to us from Green Day's Billy Joe Armstrong. Making mistakes is a lot better than not doing anything.
We'll be back next week for episode 80 of Promoter 101. It is a megasode featuring Conway Entertainment Group's Tony Conway, Mike Barsh, Steve Littman, and APA's Craig Newman. Twice the interviews for the same low price of, well, free.
This should be a good time. I can't wait for the megasode. Man, Conway, Littman, Barsh, Newman. It doesn't matter who we lead and close with. You get headliners all the way through. What a great episode. We want to thank everybody and wishing you sold out shows for the weeks to come.
Cheers. What's next?
What's next?
This is Lenore Kinder. I work for AEG Presents, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba.